Call to order this regular meeting of council of May 17th. I'll just make a note that permission's been requested to videotape the meeting. And if there's anyone that doesn't wish to be filmed, just make sure you stay out of the sight lines of the camera, which is over the corner there. And so with that, just ask for a motion to approve the agenda, please. Councillor Valerian, Councillor White, all in favor, that's carried. One set of minutes there for adoption, so again, just ask for a motion to adopt those minutes. Councillor White, thank you. Councillor Sanjanko, all in favor, that's carried. 4.1.1, coming out of committee of the whole, so just a recommendation there to first of all receive those minutes. Councillor White as well, Councillor Valerian, all in favor, that's carried. 4.1.2, recommendation authorizing the issuance of a development permit. That's for actually it's for our first potential garden suite in the town of Gibsons. Councillor Valerian, who moves that. Second, Councillor Lumley, all in favor then, and that's carried as well. 4.1.3, temporary use permit. This is the building that was formerly the hair salon, I think, down near the public market there, and this is just to looking for a temporary use permit to use it for residential purposes. So the recommendation there is to direct staff to notify the property owners and to publish the notice for that. Councillor White, Councillor Sanjanko, all in favor, carried as well. 4.1.4, just a direction to staff to work on a new policy for grants of assistance is something that we've been struggling with, and the council as to looking at better ways that we might deal with that particular matter. So I'll ask staff to come back with that. Councillor White, thank you. Councillor Sanjanko, all in favor, and that's carried. Zero Waste Select Committee minutes here for receipt. That's a committee that's chaired by Councillor White and has Councillor Valerian on that as well. First of all, just a motion to receive those. Councillor White, thank you. Councillor Valeria, all in favor? It's carried. Anything rising out of that at this point? Okay. It was certainly a very good discussion for last committee meeting. Okay, let's move to 5.1. Development permit area number 5, form of character, George Common residences.
So there are previously disclosed to council, this is approximately my home. I hope to verify with the trustees.
Back to where will you be established?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prepared a presentation in two parts largely. One part looking back at the process to date for this development permit, also summarizing the staff report, and the second part about a review of the project and design guidelines in the official community plan. So this is my outline explaining what the development permit is all about and reviewing the design guidelines and the zoning bylaw. The purpose of a development permit form of character is to regulate the form of character, the looks of the building, the outside colors, materials, the shape of the building. It also includes the landscaping details, and it sets the stage for the building permit process down the road. And council's role is to consider if the form of character fits into the OCP's design guidelines for the development permit area number 5. Looking back at the first part of my presentation, initially, as you can see at the top right-hand side, there was an application made for a single building hotel and residences in 2013. That's the typo in my presentation there, February 2013. And in November 2013, this was updated with a design of 2 buildings on a larger site. Going over a couple of the topics that have been reviewed in the past. The shadow analysis was provided by the applicant, specifically outlining shadows on Weingarten Park. In September, that shadow impact is up to 25% of the park. In December, it's more greater sunshines. This is the visual representation of that in September and March. that was discussed with council in 2014. Another topic that had been reviewed or had been followed up on is the Advisory Planning Commission's recommendations. The Commission looked at this project in December 2013, and the recommendations were followed up on by the architect, and some changes were made. This picture on the waterfront side, but also on the street front of Tower Point Road. Another thing that council asked for earlier on in the process was eye-level illustrations from various vantage points, taken from 6 views, and it was made and done to review the massing the height of this project. I'm showing just one of them here, the viewpoint from just below the building here in the Holland Parklands, looking to Weingarten Park and the residential building in front and the hotel building on the background. So in April, there was this recommendation to endorse the design and use it to inform the zoning amendment bylaw. After that, there were further changes because, as you remember, was an extensive geotechnical review done, including a peer review by our own hydrogeologist and our own geotechnical engineer, and that resulted in further changes, mainly underground in the design of the building, raising it up and make sure that it was further removed from the aquifer and the aquitaro over top of it. And this particular area was a sensitive area, and that resulted in a change to the design, basically raising the building, as you can see here. The initial design had 2 parquet layers underground at Tower Point Road. The current design has only 1, and it's only partially in the ground, and it's into the fill that's present there on top of the natural soil. Another change as a result of this raising is that the plaza through the middle of the 2 buildings is higher now than Tower Point Road, which is a bit unfortunate, but there was a very good reason for it. There's still some views to the water if you're on Tower Point Road, and of course definitely if you walk up the stairs there and over this ramp to the plaza, you'll see the ocean. This was reviewed in the summer last year, and with those additional sketches, this is one of them, a detail of it. The former character was endorsed for a future DP, pending the adoption of the zoning and the OCP amendment. So the OCP amendment was approved in October. It created an exemption for this particular site only to allow for additional stories of buildings. And for the residential building, the OCP amendment that is now adopted in October, it allows for up to 7 stories, and for the hotel building up to 8. The zoning bylaw was changed as well, and the CDA 2 zone regulates the land uses on the land portion of the site, and also some changes were made to the water portion, rezoning it M1 and PRO, and that outlines the uses, the height, particularly parking requirements, and allowable density through setting floor area limits. Moving on then to the second part of my presentation, the former character guidelines and the review of that. These are a couple of key things in those guidelines. It talks about stepping back along pedestrian routes. It calls the guidelines in the OCP call for a new waterfront walkway. It's actually outside the design guidelines. And there's other features here that are summarized that I'll continue here to my more detailed slides. So in terms of scale and massing, key things that are in our guidelines are stepping back of buildings as building heights increases. And you can see on the front here, for example, that was done by, you see that this lower portion is sticking out further than the next portion, and that portion above it sets back further, and here on top is where hotel rooms were removed after the APC recommendations. And that way, this is one of the examples where the building does step back. The guidelines also talk about using different colors and materials to make sure that there's variation. In this case, the proposal is to use materials like cement board, wood elements, metal cladding, bronze, and cedar colored metal fins. So quite a variation. You can see that the different colors here on the sketch. Let me see. The waterfront restaurant, we would also almost forget about the waterfront restaurant. It's also a building that's included in this development permit. It also was reviewed for these guidelines, and it is much smaller. It has wood elements as well, and more of a historical look, not particularly this facade, but the other one does. Uh, and The architect has added what they consider marine elements, cedar shakes, some metal cladding, and it's meant to blend in with the rest of the current structures and buildings in the water area. View protection is also a key section in the guidelines in the development permit area, and it calls for a view corridors every 30 meters. And in this case, there's a single wider view corridor over the middle of the site. That's also the plaza, the public plaza that will be created there. The actual exchange and road closure process is something that will be dealt with separately in the future. This plaza will be owned by the town. It will be a new road dedication in exchange for the ring road, current road dedication. Roofs and materials. The guidelines talk about making sure that views are protected and considered, and that there's a variation, that we don't have huge slabs, just asphalt shingles, for example. And in this case, that was definitely a consideration. A couple of slides back, you saw these parapets sticking out. In the current design, they made changes to that, so those parapets that are sticking out are now lower. They look more like clam shells, like these ones here. And that was done because they made some further changes to the design and decided that this would be a better way to deal with height and also to limit somewhat more the impact on views uphill. The height itself is now limited by the new zoning for the site. This is site note. This is the top of the roof. You can see some of this if you're living higher up the hill once this will be built. And there's gravel patterns, different colors, different shades. There's also some green elements. And this also is similar to a pattern on the office surface in the plaza itself. So there's some consistency there. If you look at it from a distance, it doesn't look too busy. Moving on to the streetscape, the interface with the public space, which on this side, really three sides: the Weingarten Park, Cowboy Road, and the future waterfront walkway. The guidelines call for good landscaping, variation, stone elements. And this is an example of the Cowboy Road facade. And let me see, we're standing on the corner of Ring Road, saying next to the post office perhaps. And so if you look at the site from there, on the left-hand side, adjacent to Weingarten Park here, we'll first have the parkade entry for the parkade that's all the way underneath this building. On the left you see the residential building. What else you see there is a landscape berm and trees. And then this is also, next over is where the main entrance of the residential building is. It's accessible from the plaza. In front of it, from here at this viewpoint, you can see a water feature because there's this elevation difference between the road and the plaza up here. It's approximately 6 feet. It was reduced somewhat. This little island here, this is also where there's a little, I'm calling it a roundabout, but it's a turning circle for the drop-off of passengers and small buses. On the right-hand side, you can see the hotel building, and there's a set of stairs to the plaza, but also an accessible trail here that uses a gradual slope to get onto the plaza. That connects to the crosswalk that you could imagine here. You're standing on the other side of it. Moving on, this is the main entrance to the conference center and the hotel. This feature here, and then to the right-hand side, you see the different elements of the building, with different colors and different materials to make to give it some variation. On the right-hand side, finally, you have the loading dock entrance. Let me see, the waterfront walkway was also further reviewed and more details were added to the design. One of the things that we asked the applicant to look into is the elevation. We know that the hotel and the residences have to be at a certain level for the flood construction level. That takes into account sea level rise for 50 years. But we asked if the waterfront walkway could be a little bit lower because that would make it easier to match up with adjacent areas. And it was possible, according to the geotechnical engineers, to lower itself somewhat. It's not a huge difference, but it's a couple of feet that will help. The walkway itself is right here between those two trees. It's flanked by planters in the plan, and doesn't show here, but in the middle of this walkway, you should look at to the point between the two buildings. That's where there's a staircase, a wide staircase going up the side to get to the plaza. There's also an elevator that you can use if you can't walk the stairs, and gets you onto the plaza level. On the right hand side, you see the waterfront restaurant, and what we also asked there is some details here around the pilings, because the waterfront restaurant is also located at this future safe level, taking into account sea level rise, but the staff were concerned about the looks of maybe too high initially for the looks of it, so it will be screened with some type of material which still needs to be further reviewed if it can be wood or it will be something else that looks properly. Landscaping, there's a landscaping plan, it's very small. There's landscaping on several different levels. The main portion of the landscaping is of course at grade, at the plaza level, but also at the waterfront walkway. But I should mention that also level 2, level 3, and higher up there are strips of landscaping on the roofs of the hotel, and that's another way to soften the mass of the building. On the waterfront, particularly, there is more details following at a later date as part of the development permit for environmentally sensitive areas. That covers all the shore, any changes to the shoreline and to other habitat. And specifically, this area has been identified as an area where plantings and changes will be made that will support the environment, and also details on this side here where storm channel will enter the ocean. The Wine Garden Park Advisory Committee is currently in the process of looking at plans for the park, and part of that is also coming up with plans for the interface. So the landscape architect for the George Hotel is also supporting the Wine Garden Park Advisory Committee and coming up with a plan for that. Then finally, that in terms of the fit with the zoning, so the zoning and the OCP have been changed. The zoning has a couple of limits that are listed on the right-hand side. I won't go over that in great detail. On the on the left-hand side is that. And on the right-hand side, there's some values listed of what is the current floor areas listed in the plans. So because the project still fits the zoning bylaw, it wasn't substantially changed from last year. Maybe 1 second on parking, key feature for a big project like this. It's all underground, 214 stalls in total. It's a reduction from 15% from the requirements. I should mention that CDA2, the zone for this hotel, has a built-in option for a reduction up to 20% from our regular bylaw requirements, but it has to be based on professional advice from a traffic consultant. And you can see attached to the development permit is the outline from last year from the parking study. Since further had some information as well, and what I was looking for before we issue a building permit is some confirmation writing that with the current program, the proposed parking is still working, so I'm confident that will be the case based on what I saw from last year. The parking does include 60 stalls for residential use, and even though the floor area for the residential units didn't really change, the number of units has increased from 35 to 40 units. That's within the same floor area that was considered last year. It also includes 12 replacement stalls for parking stalls that are disappearing from Main Road and on Downtown Road. And it includes stalls for hotel uses, including the restaurant and the spa, and also the 20-berth marina. And the plans also include bicycle stalls. That's not a requirement for my bylaw. There's covered, secured bicycle parking, which is class 1. Those are lockers, basically. Class 2 is outdoor parking with bicycles. So, in conclusion, the form of character has, in principle, has been reviewed, endorsed by council a couple of times in the past as part of the rezoning process. The current detailed designs for the development permit substantially comply with the form of character guidelines in staff's opinion. It also confirms with the OCP and zoning bylaw requirements. Just a note maybe on the next steps as well. There's a couple of other approvals still in the works. Several development permits, geotechnical review, including peer review before building permit. the development permit that addresses site contamination and a couple of other requirements. And this is one of the steps that the applicant has to complete before they are eligible for a building permit down the road. Let me see, with that, the recommendations are to receive the staff report and to authorize the mayor and corporate officer to issue the development permit. Alternative option is to identify any changes or concerns or visions that you may have. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Andre, for your report. So I think first of all, let's just have a motion to receive the report. So, for us, Councilor Barry. One, in favor, carried. So I just, to be clear, and I think you did summarize it there, but the Advisory Planning Commission had essentially looked at this project back in December of 2013, made certain recommendations. Then it was reviewed by the previous council in March of 2014, April 2014 actually, and was endorsed with the changes that were recommended by the Advisory Planning Commission. Following another presentation, this council had last year endorsed some further changes because of the type change as a result of the geotech reports. And so basically it's brought us to this point, and from what I've seen from your report, I don't see anything that has substantially changed from the previous endorsements given by council. Anyway, with that commentary, if there's any questions, Councilor Blair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that the minor changes in architecture are appreciated in lessen softening the visual impact. The changed parapets, I think, and that's, from what I understand, that's a voluntary that hasn't been required. So, as council knows, I would have liked to have gone back to the APC previously to have them confirm that their requirements have been met, but these are pretty minor changes, so I don't see the APC really commenting on these. Just wanted to emphasize that this is one of 4 development permits, and just one clarification for Director of Planning. I think you may have had it on the second last slide, but I missed it. EPA number 9, Gibsons Aquifer, it says review by staff, but there's that review by staff that is dependent on a peer review. Is that correct?
The peer review is specifically for the geotechnical DP, but it is about the aquifer. The aquifer DP itself is specifically for any either drilling or excavations. It's something that is reviewed by Dave, but I think before we get that for the building permit, the bigger, the peer review is part of the geotechnical development permit, because that's where the geotechnical design gets, the geotechnical review is about the current design, and that's where we want to review the hydrological impact as well.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor Lambert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a question about, I remember when the project was first brought forward, the landscape architects had gone to some great lengths to I guess, report that the stormwater was going to be treated and almost used as it came down through the property. And I just wondered, is that still? I mean, it was kind of hard to tell through the slides or the description, but I mean, with all our efforts to use to concentrate on eco assets and so on and so forth, is that still like a goal of the landscape design?
The water features are not with the groundwater. No, it's dealt with separately in a different way. I understand from the applicant that wasn't viable to create structures for that. Mr. Phillips is available if we want to explore that further. That's the short of it.
Thank you, Andre, for the detailed report, and I feel much the same way. We've been in this process for quite some time. There's nothing in this report that differs from prior things that, we've reviewed.
Yeah, I just, acknowledge that we've had a lot of information landing in our email boxes, and I acknowledge that I've looked at each of these, the contaminated sites issue, the aquifer review, Wynn Road, the traffic, and I have to say that either I agree, in the case of the traffic, I agree with the agreement as it is, or, in terms of how it relates to a form and character permit, I don't really see the connection. These other, regular planning has a slide saying what the steps are, and I'm satisfied that those steps are being followed. This is a character permit, it's been discussed at length, so I'm willing to make the motion.
Wynn Road isn't part of the form project?
Okay, please be quiet, please.
Wynn Road
Oh,
isn't
listen,
part of the
You're
form
a guest here,
of the project?
you have no standing here to speak right now.
And make a motion as specified in the staff report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Lumley, further discussion? All in favor? That's carried.
Boo. Shame on you.
Okay, you can let Councillor White know that we're ready for him. Russia. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to 5.2, BC Rural Dividend Program, Gibsons Covered Area Economic Development Strategy. So, Vanny, do you want to speak to us on that one, please?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the report is seeking council's authorization to apply for this recently developed grant, BC Rural Dividend Program. And it's to create an economic development strategy for the Gibsons Harbor. The harbor is a strong economic driver for Gibsons and the Sunshine Coast in general. The town has significant interests in and around the harbor, including the Harbor Authority, very large recreational water lease, and several waterfront properties as well. There's a lack of socio-economic data on the size and the implications of economic activity within the harbor itself. And so this program is a 3-year program, and on the first year we sort of create a baseline of information, and based on the information that we collect, we then develop on the second phase, if successfully applied for, we'll then develop some strategies to address that. So the recommendations on the front of the report, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the CAO with respect to what he's proposing there? No? Okay, Councillor White?
Vital to have this baseline information, so support this proposal. One question I have is a change on page 1 from 171 to 67 employees. I guess my concern is that I think I don't know I don't know the details, but I understand the initial announcement was 171, and then a lot of changes were made where early retirements were accepted areas, but still, when that happens, you still have 171 positions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. The original 171 was the announcement numbers over a period of several months. Through different strategies, the ultimate numbers was sort of, as reported, the 67 employees. But I acknowledge that the financial loss to the area has not changed. And perhaps in the application, I'll note to try and sort of identify what that number is rather than sort of number of employees if, as a suggestion.
Okay, anything else on that one? And we were for the, to receive the report and to authorize the submission of the application then, Councilor White. Second. Councilor Valerian, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Manny. Council reports, Councilor White, you've got a fairly extensive one as usual. Anything you wish to add to that?
Catching up for the month, monthly report, I don't think there's anything, I need to highlight here, but I'll, just so ask for any questions.
Councilor Valerian?
Doesn't seem like I'm really obsessed with the advisory planning commission. I also attended their meeting on Monday, and it was good to hear them discuss our sign bylaw and their smoke control bylaw. So it's nice to see the inner workings of that. That's all I have for council duties. I just wanted to highlight out of interest news out of Ontario moving to phase out natural gas for heating, retrofit buildings, electric vehicles, transit and cycling infrastructure. So it's expressed my appreciation that we've got climate change in our strategic plan now, and that it's becoming more and more focused. And I think we're on the right side of things with some fairly radical changes coming out of, I guess, probably our biggest problem. So that's it for me.
The only thing I'd just like to mention is that last week, Bill Oakford, who's been our work master for quite a number of years, officially retired, and his position is now being filled by Jim Conway there. So thanks to Bill for the work that he's done with respect to managing the work for all of these years. Much appreciated. Okay, 7.1, correspondence, just motion to receive the correspondence regarding Tourism Week. Councilor Sanjanko, second Councilor Valerian, all in favor? Carried. Specific coming out of that. Okay. 7.2, let's receive that first of all, I guess. Councilor Longo, thank you. Councilor White, all in favor? Carried. So, are we part of these discussions here? Is that just at staff level? Has this just been at staff level, Andre? I guess what struck me about it is basically I thought we were pretty much doing all of that. It was set up there, so I was kind of struggling with what we would be looking at actually doing with this. I guess I'm trying to figure out that most of this is represented within our OCP, and certainly any of the applications that I've seen come forward, a lot of these considerations are already there in our planning department. So I'm a little bit fuzzy on just sort of what the sort of overall sort of direction is. It certainly may be that that some of these principles could be more efficiently applied in the regional district, I guess, to be tactful. Certainly from what I see of our planning department and our engineering department, so on, we're there. So where do you see it going? I guess I ask you, Andre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is something we had a couple of short discussions about with our fellow planners at the SRD in the district of Seychelles. And this is one of the initiatives that came forward from the We Envision Regional Sustainability Plan. This is one of the things that they have been wanting to work on, and we have been wanting to work on. Some of it sounds very familiar, and I think, yes, at first glance, thinking about it in the meetings that I had, a lot of it is also reflected in our own OCP, in different words perhaps. But as part of this initiative for the SRD, I think the benefit is and also for us and Seychelles, that we have a common language and shared principles for land use, and I think that's where the board of the SRD has an interest.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Mr. Mayor, because my position at the SCRD is that this is duplication of work, because we already do this work in our own planning. We have this language in our OCPs, and I've encouraged the SRD rather than to pursue this through regional planning, which we pay a part of, pay a share of. That's why we would pursue it in rural planning instead, which is all the rural areas are in. And the rural area planning, the rural planning department could then be free to meet with the municipalities and common language and common rules. So my observation too is that we are already
Okay, if there's any other comments, I guess really what I would say is that we'd certainly encourage, as Councillor White has just indicated, that perhaps the regional district could continue to pursue those, and certainly Andre is part of that group. Certainly lend whatever expertise, experience that you have to it, but I'm at the moment not seeing that there should be much time spent by our staff on making changes here.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I can mention that in the principles you will see some references to natural assets as well. That was one of the specific things that I brought forward on behalf of the town to make sure that was covered. But these principles, yeah, the planners are on board with this based on our own long-term plans, so we don't need to spend a lot more time on it per se. It's up to council if you want to just receive it. I think yes, we may be interested in some type of endorsement, but it's up to you. If need be, I could draft a short report, but in short, it will outline where the current OCP, official community plan for the town, also supports these principles. That's basically what I could outline to you, but if there's no need for that, then I won't.
So, first, I think probably if we just receive the report, and if you at some future point feel there's something to go further with it, let us know, but I think you're already doing the job, so receiving that, Councillor White, Councillor Sanjanko, all in favor, and that's carried. 7.3, City of Cranbrook resolution. So, there's a motion to receive that first. Councillor Valeria, Councillor White, all in favor, that's carried. So basically, that is a call out to the PC municipalities to make a contribution to the city of Fort McMurray. Cranbrook is proposing $1,000. It's kind of hard to say no. What they're going to there, and in fact, it's although it's not the city today, but it's the infrastructure outside of the city that's been threatened again today as a result of further evacuations. I know my son is a police officer in the city of Edmonton, and they are all working overtime with the people that have had to leave Fort McMurray to try to assist them in the city of Edmonton. So it's extremely disruptive to those people, and although the city of Fort McMurray will probably get a fair bit of assistance, I suspect, from the province and the federal government, knowing how we struggle with infrastructure and so on, I can only feel the pain that they have of trying to basically rebuild all of their infrastructure. So a small donation, as the city of Cranbrook is suggesting here, directly to the city of Fort McMurray, I think perhaps is a good message for consolidation of local government in Canada. So I'd like to hear please concerns. Otherwise, it would be great doing something like this.
prepared to entertain it, but I guess I am concerned. About how the province some general principle that's ever more stronger. Municipalities are too often
certainly don't disagree with that. It is a bit of a unique situation, of course. So, I won't move it unless somebody else is prepared to. Otherwise, we'll just receive it. I've made my own personal donations. This is a little bit different here. This one. So I can leave it at that for the moment. If somebody decides they want to bring it back. Okay. All right. So could we? What I received? Sorry, Councillor London.
I think there's an important point is that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Council White might be the best to do it, but, you know, probably a resolution at UBCM to not just encourage support like after the fact if the town's burnt down, but I know a lot of things I've read is that the fire prevention by the province and federal government is lacking way behind even like flood levels, and I know we talk about all the time, but nobody talks about fire prevention. I know Whistler, I think they're paying $500,000 right now to start, like they have a huge fire prevention project going on right now. So maybe something could be done, not just to like give money after the fact, but actually encourage the province to also fund protections for communities with respect to like wildfires. And from what I've read, it's lacking far behind any other type of like tornadoes or or like any of this other planning. Like fire prevention just is way behind. So it'd be nice to wrap some support up with also the need for prevention rather than just support after.
Councillor White.
incidentally, as I was reading the news outside on the street,
Okay, I hadn't heard that, but I guess it's a good reminder while we have so many people here and the press. Actually, somebody last night came that I bumped into just over the side of town here had come down to tell me that some people had a fire up on Gospel Rock. Now, I do know that people do that, but it wouldn't take very much to lose the force that we have here within the town. So I sincerely hope that people are not outside fires in these areas. Okay. Yeah, I lost my track. Did we receive that, or we did? Okay, all right. Okay. Bylaws 8.1 development cost charge bylaw. David.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as you may recall, the development cost charge bylaw was rewritten and came back to council and needed to make it to third reading, and then it was sent to the ministry for the ministry to approve it. We received word back from the ministry, and they wanted two changes. One, although we had the rate table included in our rates, fees, and charges bylaw, they wanted to actually see it in the DCC's bylaw. I didn't figure that out was a hill I wanted to try and die on, so fine, okay, we'll put it in the DCC bylaw. And then they had an issue with the garden suite specifically being exempt. I went through the legislation myself, and although they weren't looking for it, I agree with them, that the way the legislation is written, we cannot exclude the garden suites, short of going to a bylaw that might address affordable housing, which is opening up a little bit more can of worms and
review of our DCC bylaw before we even get this one out of the ground. So, what we need to do is we need to repeal the third reading and give third reading to the revised bylaw. And in this process, we'll also need to abandon, or council will need to abandon the rates, fees, and charges bylaw. We took that to the reading as well, but now it's, we're not table in there any longer. So. Now, at the time I wrote the report, we were looking at the possibility of charging garden suites similar to a townhouse development at a per square meter floor area charge, and that was, we were estimating, well, we knew that the maximum was going to be 8,620 for total DCCs for a garden suite, and that's based on the maximum size that a garden suite can be built. And then we were speculating at an average of around 5,270. Since I wrote the report, actually today, I was talking to our consultant, and we were discussing the merits of charging a per unit cost for garden suites instead. And so he did some projections and the calculation and came up with $6,178, which is listed in that hard copy that was passed around to you at the beginning of the meeting. So that brings the development cost charge down a little bit further. In comparison, a single family dwelling pays around almost $18,000 in DCCs in a duplex unit. So one side of a duplex would pay a little over $12,000. So $6,000 is a pretty reduced DCC rate. However, staff was anticipating that, well, one of our reasons for creating the garden suite area was to provide affordable rentals, etc. And adding another charge on there may be something that council was reluctant to do. And so the suggestion from staff is that if you wanted to kind of offset that financial impact of the development cost charge, is that you could provide an incentive for garden suites funded from the Affordable Housing Fund that would offset the overall municipal costs of the project. And in a way that it makes sense, because a development cost charge is for the impact to roads and infrastructure that is created by development. Just because a garden suite is smaller doesn't mean that it doesn't create, or the people living in it don't create an additional burden. And so in a way it does, if council wanted to, or was concerned about that additional $6,000 charge, it would probably be appropriate to come from a place such as the affordable housing system with the goals of the garden suite. So that's about all that I want to draw your attention to. You've got the recommendations from staff on the first page, and if there's any questions.
Well, certainly, yes, I mean, it does make sense to make development contribute to development cost charges, so I mean, there's a rationale for that, for sure. I think we'll have to leave that discussion for another day about, whether we look at some accommodation there, and I think really until we kind of hear from our planning department what seriously discourages the development of garden suites or not, efforts at that time, it may not be a big factor. I don't know. Awesome. Other questions, Councilor Lundberg?
I just wondered, in your discussions, if you ever, with the garden suites, if you ever thought of using like a per square meter charge instead of like a per dwelling.
We did look at that, and that's actually what the report initially reflected. It was a per unit. So the copy of the schedule that you've got on your iPad actually reflects that unit cost, or sorry, the per square meter. Yeah. And because, I mean, we were speculating somewhat on what the average garden suite is going to be, but I would imagine if you're able to build a garden suite, you would probably want to be getting up to the 900 square feet. And so the which would result in $8,600 of DCCs. So dropping down to a per unit, we felt that this, was potential to the overall less charge or less impact to a garden suite. The other rationale behind that is whether or not you have a garden suite of 600 square feet or 900 square feet, chances are the impact or the number of people living in there is going to be more or less the same. Garden suites aren't really meant for the, four-person family and a dog. I think we're geared towards a smaller family.
So we could do these recommendations as a lump here, but I just want to ask whether that would include the very last one, whether we want staff to look at a policy at this point, or whether we want to leave that part alone until such time as we see whether that becomes an issue or not. I'm pretty open on that. Does anybody have some strong feelings on that? Councilor Larry?
I'd like to hear some feedback before we go in that direction, so I'd like to leave it off and wait to see what we hear about whether this is really punitive and discourages garden suites.
So you would move the recommendations there with the exception of the last one, then? That's right. Second for that, there. Councilor Sanjanko, further discussion on that? I'm sorry, yes.
Make sure we're really clear what we're moving and seconding. If we could insert a clause in between the rescinding of third, third is amended, if you could insert a clause that says, and that the replacement Schedule A garden suites rate as a per dwelling. So it's very clear when we're
I'm fine with that. All right. Okay. Any further discussion on that?
If this has occurred, I don't understand. Charge. I also think it can be affordable. Fact that we could accumulate money in that fund and
Yeah, it is. Basically, it's a higher level of government than ours that tells us we don't have a choice on that part. That's the
And staff was aware that this might have been an issue. When we had the bylaw reviewed by our legal, they said, they're seeing these bylaws with specific exemptions such as garden suites turned down. But they say, give it a shot. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to delay your bylaw a little bit. We're not the only ones that have tried this and not the ones that have refused.
All right, well, we're certainly going to be relying on staff to let us know if that seems to reaching our objective of garden suites and then to Okay, so with that then, just call for the vote. Hang on here. We opposed here too? Or not? Let me just call that again. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried then with Councillor White. Okay, we're at inquiries. Just want to read an excerpt from the new procedure bylaw. Inquiries is for the purpose of members of the public to ask single questions of council. Each individual must state their name and jurisdiction of residence. Questions must be addressed to the presiding member using that person's title. Each individual question shall be limited to 2 minutes. Priority will be given to questions relating to an item on the agenda. The maximum time allotted for this agenda item shall be 10 minutes unless a longer period is agreed to by unanimous consent or unanimous vote of the members present. So this one will ask if there are any inquiries.
Let me see if I get this right. Mr. Mayor, my name is Suzanne Singer. My address is 889 Chamberlain Road. My one question presumes that every member of council received a letter drafted by the planner on May 6, 2016 to Robert A. Casting regarding the Timbers versus Roe petition was filed in the BC Supreme Court at this time.
Sorry.
Pardon me, not Roe.
Timbers versus Roe, I don't believe.
Town of Gibson. Timbers versus Roe was the other one. And it presumes that you are all in receipt of the latest letter yesterday, May 16th, in which it states the lawyer accepts that the town had plans in place to comply with the appropriate sections of the community charter to deal with the closure and disposition of Wynn Road, that you did not prior to adopting the zoning bylaw for the George Hotel and Residences application. The council missed a step by failing to hold a public hearing to address this change in the official community plan, and that this concern is exacerbated by this development permit that you just approved the issuance of, as if somehow Wynn Road has nothing to do with the form of the George Hotel and Residences application. So my one question is, how is it possible that Wynn Road isn't part of a form and character DP?
Thank you. Staff to respond.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as you know, as Ms. Singer just pointed out, this matter is before the courts, and it would not be appropriate to comment at this time. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not legal to comment.
Okay, seeing no more inquiries, at that point I will ask for a motion to close, as set out in